To try to land a big shot. If that don't happen, or if he lands it and it don't hurt Chris, then it's going to be really, pretty rough for him because Chris is definitely an improved fighter.
Deal. But who is at the bigger disadvantage? Conor Benn.
Conor Benn. I mean, this is a guy that's not fought in Britain for 3 years. I think his last fight was in April 2022.
Boxing experts are warning Conor Benn about the dangers of fighting Chris Eubank Jr. Roy Jones Jr. has pointed out that Eubank is a better fighter now and could cause serious problems for Benn, especially if Benn's punches don't hurt him. Jones also says Eubank has key advantages, like his size and strength, which might be too much for Benn to handle. Many analysts agree that moving up in weight to fight a naturally bigger and more experienced opponent is risky for Benn. With Eubank's toughness, Benn could be in real trouble on fight night.
How do you see that one going?
Very tough fight for Conor. Not saying he can't win it because one big left hook could change anything. But to me, his best chance are to try to land a big shot. If that don't happen, or if he lands it and it don't hurt Chris, then it's going to be really, pretty rough for him because Chris is definitely an improved fighter. You understand me? And like even the stuff he's doing now, he's going to continue to get better. But I think when he came down there with me for that year, it improved his foundation. You understand me? So it made him a better fighter. So he's going to be hard to beat for anybody, especially a guy that's smaller than him. But we saw Liam Smith pull out the upset at one time. So I know that gave Ben much more hope that he could probably do the same. So it's going to be a great fight. Both fighters are great fighters. I love both of them. I think Chris is a little bigger and has the advantage because he's bigger, but it's going to be a great fight.
You know what, a lot of people are talking about it, Roy, you know about cutting weight and whatnot. A lot of people are talking about Chris Eubank Jr. now being at 160 and maybe being tight at that weight now, but the rehydration clause, £10, I'm saying, listen, with a £10 rehydration clause in it, that won't affect him at all.
That won't affect him at all, but I don't really think Chris is big on rehydrating anyway, so I don't think he's going to get that big, you know what I mean? He might, but I don't think 10 pounds bothers him at all.
Eddie Hearn has said Conor Benn is at a big disadvantage in this fight. Benn is moving up 2 weight classes, which could hurt his performance. Fighters who jump up in weight often struggle with the extra power, stamina, and physicality of naturally bigger opponents. Benn will be facing Chris Eubank Jr., who is strong and comfortable at this weight, making this a tough challenge for Benn.
When Kell Brook went up to fight Gennady Golovkin at middleweight, guess what? There was a hydration clause with the IBF, and Gennady Golovkin makes it absolutely easily, as will Chris Eubank. But it's just, that's our job, and I mean, no need to moan about it. If you didn't want to do it, you didn't have to have it in there. But they know it's not a big deal. But who is at the bigger disadvantage? Conor Benn, coming up 2 divisions. And Chris Eubank just weighs in what he always weighs in. You know, that whole, they're stripping him down to 160. It's his fucking weight. I don't understand. Stop listening to Simon Jordan.
Carl Froch shared his thoughts on Conor Benn, calling him a great young man, but saying he hasn't fought top-level competition yet. Froch believes Benn is still unproven against elite fighters and hasn't shown the skills needed to dominate at the highest level. He also mentioned that Benn hasn't fought in 3 years, which could hurt his performance against someone as strong as Eubank.
I'm not sure what the genuine beef is with Conor Benn and Chris Eubank. I know they've got the history, like I mentioned, the father's name. Chris Eubank seems quite chilled and quite happy and smiley. But every time Conor Benn comes into close proximity with Chris Eubank Jr., he turns into a roadman killer, doesn't he? He's got serious beef. Every time he gets in his face, he puts it on him. Says he don't like him, he even hates him. He wants to smash his head in. I'm like, is this just selling the fight, or is this genuine needle? And if it is genuine needle, what's it for? Is it why you got so much beef? Is it just because of the family name? Conor Benn could do with winning this because he's 28 years old, and moving forward, he's got a potential bright future ahead of him. Chris Eubank Jr. wins this fight. I'm not sure what doors it opens for him or where it takes him at 35 years old, because in my opinion, at this age of your boxing career, then you've only got 2 or 3 years left, especially at this weight.
Froch also said this fight isn't very exciting. He pointed out that Chris Eubank Jr. doesn't fight often, usually only once a year. Meanwhile, Conor Benn hasn't done enough to prove he belongs at this weight. Froch thinks the big difference in their weight classes makes this a mismatch, not a competitive fight. Fans might not get the action they expect because Eubank is naturally much bigger and stronger.
The Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight does absolutely nothing for me.
Really?
Yeah, Chris Eubank Jr. lost to George Groves, he lost to Billy Joe Saunders, he doesn't box, he boxes once a year. He looked terrible in his last fight. He was slow with his jab, he was leaving his chin in the air, his balance looks like it's gone. He's 36 years old, talking about fighting Canelo Alvarez and taking on all these top, he was talking about Triple G for a while, who's now gone 40 and retired.
Yeah.
Conor Benn, what's Conor Benn done?
Not a lot.
He's beat Chris Algieri and failed, he's failed that drugs test. We're not seeing him do anything.
Yeah,
He's fought nobody, he's not developed. He's not developed, he's done nothing. So for Conor Benn to jump in there with Chris Eubank Jr., the only reason that fight would be close is because they're probably going to drain Eubank down to 160, a middleweight. And then but Conor Benn's having to come up from 147.
Yeah.
So
Gap there.
it's not an exciting fight, he don't prove anything, and there's no marbles.
Famous boxing expert Teddy Atlas has praised Chris Eubank Jr.'s skills. Atlas says when Eubank is mentally locked in, he's a very disciplined fighter. His talent, experience, and focus could be the difference in this fight. Atlas believes if Eubank comes in fully ready, he'll have a big edge over Benn, especially since Eubank has fought much tougher competition before.
Be an interesting fight. You can make I like parts of each guy. I like the ability of Eubanks when he's right. When his focus is there, when he's right, to be able to do things in a boxing way on the outside. And I love Benn's style and his approach. I do, where being aggressive in a responsible way. In a way a fighter should be, with paying attention to doing it with defense and responsibility of defense, and just proper way to engage somebody, but the consistent offense looking to engage. I think it's an interesting, and again the thing that the flowers that come with it is the interest of the fans.
Coldwell pointed out that Chris Eubank Jr. has key advantages in this fight, mainly experience and size. Eubank has been in big fights for years, facing top-level opponents. That experience helps him stay calm under pressure. Plus, his size is another big factor. Moving up in weight is always tough, and Benn might struggle against a naturally bigger, stronger fighter like Eubank, who can take punches and hit harder.
I just think that there's size advantages with Chris. There's experience at fighting at a higher level with Chris, but there's also a lot more wear and tear on Chris. Chris is getting older. Making 160 is getting harder, but just getting older is a fact. Age catches up on us, and I thought in his last fight, I did think he looked old. So there are a lot of factors to this fight. There's Conor Benn's not boxed at the level. Not that Chris is an amazing level, but he's not had the same sort of experience as what Chris has had. But also he's sharper, he's faster, and we've seen that Chris can get knocked out. So you don't know what's going to happen.
Coldwell also explained that when a fighter takes on a much bigger opponent, they need to be 100% sure they can win. But he warned that rehydration rules could hurt Benn. After weigh-ins, fighters try to regain weight, but strict limits might stop Benn from fully recovering. If he has to drain himself to make weight and can't rehydrate properly, he could be weaker and slower against Eubank.
From the past that were now brought into the present. So yeah, that's good, and I'm glad Chris and his dad have made up, because I know that they seem to have had the problems and stuff. So that's good to hear. As for the show and for the hype, that just adds to it. It's going to be nuts, obviously.
What you saying in regards of two things here? How much of that Conor Benn having to make up that weight where Eubank is, and also the rehydration, which kind of limits Eubank for the next day. What do you think about those situations?
Well, I'm not a fan of rehydration clauses, to be fair. When it's, I get the IBF is world title fight, that's their rules, not a problem, £10. But when it's not a title fight, if you're picking a fight against a guy that's a lot bigger, you're believing that you can beat that man. Well, for me, I'm like, well, if you stick a rehydration clause on him, then you're saying you can only beat him if he's not able to be what he would be against somebody else's own weight normally. So you're kind of cheapening the value of your win if he was to win. But I also heard, I'm sure, that Eubank said that he only puts on about 8-9 pounds anyway. So really, if that's the case, then it doesn't really make any difference. So crack on. The question for me is, does Eubank stay strong getting to 160? Because in his last fight, it's also the first time I've looked at him and thought, you look old. So I don't know. Ben's going to go in there swinging, guns blazing. I don't know what he walks around at. He's not really been a puncher at light middleweight when he's boxed, that sort of weight a couple of times. I don't know. It's interesting. It's one of those fights where you think that the bigger man should win and he should be able to do a job on him, but the pace and intensity that Conor Benn's going to bring as well, it could catch him. It's not like now.
Heavyweight champ Anthony Joshua is excited for this fight. He thinks the matchup is interesting because of both fighters' histories and their family rivalry. Joshua didn't pick a winner but said the clash of personalities between Eubank and Benn should make for an action-packed, high-energy fight.
Joshua. By the way, that was interesting. Eubank Benn, that's a fight you want to see, no?
That is a fight I want to see.
Good fight, isn't it?
For sure, it is a good fight.
Big fight as well, like stadium, packed out.
Are we saying stadium?
I think so. I think
it'll do well?
Yeah.
Wembley, Tottenham, Cardiff.
Tottenham, yeah. 60,000.
That'll work out well.
Yeah, I think Wembley might just be pushing it just a little bit.
I think they can do it.
Only a few certain men can do Wembley.
Boxing's on the big stage.
Agreed.
Look at this.
Agreed.
It's amazing.
You've had a nice little break. I saw you out in Nigeria. Do you feel like re-energized, ready to go again?
You know I do.
I know you do.
You know I do.
Yeah.
But more so after my last fight, I took some time out.
Mm-hmm.
I let my body heal, which I'm still working on now. And I declined some business opportunities so I can focus on the sport, which takes off mental pressure, not just physical stuff. So I let my body heal physically. And then the mental aspect, I've obviously declined some things that are draining mentally. And I went away with family, which is always good. And we're back again, ready for...
Amir Khan says this fight means more than just two boxers in a ring. It's about family history. The Benn-Eubank rivalry goes back 30 years, with both fighters carrying their fathers' legacies. Khan believes this isn't just a boxing match. It's about family pride and continuing one of boxing's greatest rivalries.
That's a good fight, and it's been talked about a long time. And not only that, the fathers have fought each other. They don't get on. So if this is it's like generational history between the guys. So this is where the best man's gonna win. And I think both fighters it's not like one. They're both at the peak, in my opinion. They both are strong. So I think the winner of that fight will cement their legacy of which family was the better fighters.
It's mad, isn't it, when you go like that and you go like, rewind 30 years and you got Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank Sr. and their dislike between them two, the family rivalry between them two, and the kids have both picked it up. Did you ever think that we'd get Conor Benn, who was obviously a welterweight, Chris Eubank Jr., who boxes high as super middle, come down to middle? Did you ever think we'd get it?
No, I never thought that would ever happen because, you can see the size difference. But then obviously with Conor developing and getting stronger, getting bigger, filling out a little bit more, and then obviously with Eubank coming down, he has to dehydrate himself to get down. So they met in the middle. So yeah, respect to both fighters for one going up and one coming down. But I think it's going to be an epic fight. What a fight it's going to be. But I don't know who to pick. Conor is he's a tough fighter. You can't take your eye off Conor. He's got that power. He's got the explosiveness. But then again, if he hits Eubank with the same shot, is Eubank going to go back? Is he going to step back? Is he going to go down? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think skill might win the fight. So I don't know, I might lean more towards... It's a hard one because last time I was saying Conor Benn, but I think now, thinking about the fight and now it's more realistic that it's going to happen.
When asked who will win, Amir Khan said it's hard to predict. He noted that while one fighter is dropping weight, the other is moving up, making this very unpredictable. But lately, Khan's been leaning toward Eubank, thinking technical skills will decide it. In his view, experience and boxing IQ will determine the winner of this massive fight.
A rehydration clause, because I've been quite vocal about it. There's a rehydration clause, but it's £10 now. That's the IBF rules, and £10. Chris Eubank Jr. boxes at 160 anyway, so I don't see it being a big problem. What do you make of that? Does that change your mind?
Yeah, you know what? Every fighter says it's a normal thing. I'm only £10 in anyway. I come light into the fight. That's not true. No, seriously, Eubank.
I know that, mate. I
Eubank
know.
You as a fighter as well. Eubank must come in at least 15, 20 pounds. So he's going to hold that down.
What weight would you put on from weigh-in to when you box, when you got in the ring? How much would you put on?
So, 10 pounds.
Chris Eubank Jr. isn't just fighting Conor Benn. He's fighting his family's legacy. With a father who dominated the sport and collected championship belts, anything less than victory tarnishes a proud boxing name. Every punch Eubank throws carries 30 years of history. Yet Benn enters this grudge match with fire in his eyes. His bond with Father Nigel Benn transforms this from another bout into a sacred mission. While Eubank battles expectations, Benn fights for redemption. Two different motivations colliding in the ring. This isn't merely a boxing match. It's unfinished business between two bloodlines. Experts note Eubank's physical advantages.
Won a winner, he failed. And that's not something that happened to his dad. His dad had, countless world title level fights. There's still time for Conor Benn to fulfill his dad's legacy. I think Eubank Jr. is the one with actually the more pressure here in this fight for that reason. Because your dad, officially, even though one of them was a dodgy decision in the draw, a lot of people thought that the draw between the two dads should have gone to Nigel. He's a win and a draw in this. If you then go in that fight and lose, that's actually a bad mark on the Eubank name, and that now that Benn are at least level, if not in a lot of people's eyes, 2-1 winning. Whereas if Conor Benn loses, well, my dad lost before to a Eubank. It's not the end of the fucking world. There's more pressure on Eubank, yeah, and he's actually adding a lot of pressure on himself in the way he's talking, which I kind of admire.
That's a wrap. Stay tuned for more.